He built it. He ruled it. He defined it. Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Austrian Oak, the 7-time Mr. Olympia, the man who turned bodybuilding from a fringe subculture into a global phenomenon. He is bodybuilding. But now, at 76 years old, Arnold looks at the sport he created and feels something unexpected: disgust. The man who once called bodybuilding the greatest sport in the world now barely acknowledges its existence. He's walked away from the stage, turned his back on the competitions, and distanced himself from the very thing that made him famous. Why? What happened to the sport that Arnold loved so much that he dedicated his life to it? What transformed his passion into revulsion? And what does his rejection of modern bodybuilding tell us about what the sport has become? This is the story of a king who grew to hate his own kingdom. This is the shocking reason why Arnold Schwarzenegger has turned his back on modern bodybuilding. To understand Arnold's disgust, we need to go back to the beginning. Back to the golden era, when bodybuilding was art, not science. When it was about creating beauty, not building monsters. Arnold's bodybuilding was different. It was about proportion, symmetry, and flow. It was about creating a physique that looked like it was carved by Michelangelo. His goal wasn't to be the biggest man on stage. It was to be the most beautiful. Look at Arnold in his prime. The V-taper from his shoulders to his waist. The perfect proportions of his arms, chest, and legs. The way his muscles flowed together like a symphony. This wasn't just muscle, this was art. This was what bodybuilding was supposed to be. His training philosophy reflected this aesthetic focus. Arnold didn't just lift weights, he sculpted his body. Every exercise was chosen not just for its ability to build muscle, but for its ability to create the perfect shape. He would spend hours perfecting his poses, not just to win competitions, but to create living art. The competitions of Arnold's era were celebrations of human potential. The stage was a gallery, and the bodybuilders were living sculptures. The audience came to witness beauty, to see what the human body could become when pushed to its artistic limits. Arnold's rivalry with competitors like Franco Columbu, Frank Zane, and Serge Nubret wasn't just about who was bigger or stronger. It was about who could create the most perfect physique, who could best embody the classical ideal of masculine beauty. The sport had soul. It had meaning beyond just muscle mass. It was connected to the ancient Greek ideal of physical perfection, to the Renaissance celebration of the human form, to the timeless pursuit of beauty through discipline and dedication. But something changed. Somewhere along the way, bodybuilding lost its soul. It stopped being about art and became about excess. It stopped being about beauty and became about shock value. It stopped being about inspiration and became about intimidation. The transformation didn't happen overnight. It was a gradual corruption that took place over decades. But Arnold watched it happen, and with each passing year, he became more disgusted with what his beloved sport had become. The first sign of decay was the obsession with size. Bigger became better, regardless of proportion or aesthetics. The classical V-taper that defined Arnold's era was replaced by the blocky, distended physiques of the mass monster era. Arnold had always believed that bodybuilding should inspire people to improve themselves. When people saw his physique, they thought, "I want to look like that." But when people see modern bodybuilders, they think, "I never want to look like that." The sport that was supposed to celebrate human potential began to represent human excess. Instead of showing what the body could become through natural development and artistic vision, it began to showcase what the body could become through pharmaceutical intervention and obsessive extremism.
Have their stomachs sticking out. You know, what are we talking about here? I mean, it used to be that you should have a V-shaped body. Now, I don't know, it's like kind of like a bottle. Standing on stage that no one can pull in their stomach anymore for a long period of time and stand on stage.
Arnold watched as his sport became a freak show. The men on stage no longer looked like Greek gods. They looked like science experiments gone wrong. Their guts protruded, their proportions were distorted, and their overall appearance was more shocking than inspiring. But the aesthetic corruption was just the beginning. What really disgusted Arnold was the moral corruption that followed. The golden era had its secrets, but it also had its standards. There was a code of conduct, a sense of honor, and a respect for the sport's traditions. Competitors were gentlemen first, athletes second. Modern bodybuilding abandoned these standards. The sport became dominated by ego, greed, and deception. Competitors would do anything to win, regardless of the cost to their health, their integrity, or the sport's reputation. Arnold watched as bodybuilding became associated with drug abuse, criminal behavior, and moral bankruptcy. The sport that had once represented the highest ideals of human development became a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked ambition.
But when you have guys come out one after the next to just go, they barely can get their breath together, and then the stomach hangs out, and then they hit the shot, and the neck is 23 inches, and the calves are 18. The proportion is gone in order to be a champion. I think that we will have more and more people shy away from that and say, I don't want to look like that. If it continues this way.
The lies became endemic. Competitors would claim natural status while using massive amounts of performance-enhancing drugs. They would sell supplements promising impossible results while hiding the real secrets of their success. They would present themselves as role models while living lives of deception and excess. Arnold, who had always been relatively honest about his own drug use, was disgusted by this culture of deception. He believed that bodybuilding should be about inspiring people to be better, not about lying to them for profit. The business side of bodybuilding also disgusted Arnold. The sport that had once been driven by passion and artistry became driven by money and marketing. Competitions became commercial spectacles designed to sell products rather than celebrate achievement. Arnold watched as supplement companies took over the sport, turning competitions into extended advertisements for their products. The athletes became walking billboards, more concerned with their sponsorship deals than their artistic development. The judging became corrupted by politics and financial interests. Winners were chosen not based on who had the best physique, but on who had the best business relationships. The sport's integrity was compromised by commercial considerations. Arnold, who had always seen bodybuilding as pure competition based on merit, was disgusted by this commercialization. He believed that the best physique should win, regardless of politics or business relationships. But perhaps what disgusted Arnold most was what modern bodybuilding did to its athletes. The sport that was supposed to build men began to destroy them. Arnold watched as competitor after competitor suffered serious health consequences from their pursuit of extreme size. Heart attacks, kidney failure, liver damage, and premature death became common in a sport that was supposed to represent peak health. The psychological damage was equally severe. Arnold watched as athletes became obsessed with size to the point of mental illness. Body dysmorphia, depression, and anxiety became epidemic among competitors who could never be big enough, lean enough, or perfect enough. The sport that had given Arnold confidence, purpose, and joy was giving modern athletes insecurity, obsession, and misery. The transformation was heartbreaking for someone who had experienced bodybuilding's positive potential. Arnold also watched as the sport's influence on young people became increasingly negative. Instead of inspiring healthy lifestyle choices, modern bodybuilding was promoting dangerous extremes and unrealistic expectations. Young men were being taught that natural development wasn't enough, that they needed drugs to be worthy of respect. They were being sold impossible standards and dangerous shortcuts. The sport that had once been a positive influence was becoming a destructive force. Arnold's disgust reached its peak when he realized that modern bodybuilding was actively harming the people it was supposed to help. The sport had become the opposite of everything he believed it should be. The final straw for Arnold was the complete abandonment of the sport's aesthetic principles. Modern bodybuilding had become so focused on size that it had forgotten about beauty entirely. Arnold watched as competitors took the stage with distended guts, asymmetrical development, and grotesque proportions. The classical ideals that had defined his era were not just ignored, they were actively rejected. The vacuum pose, a signature move of the golden era that showcased the classical V-taper, disappeared from modern competitions. The poses that had once been used to display artistic beauty were replaced by poses designed to showcase maximum mass. Arnold realized that modern bodybuilding wasn't just different from his era, it was the antithesis of everything he had worked to build. The sport had become a parody of itself, a grotesque distortion of its original ideals.
Like it was in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. Back again to become a subculture where it's only for a limited amount of characters. I think we worked very hard to get it out of that in the 70s, and we were successful in convincing people that this is a beautiful body.
The judges need to consider everything, not just who has the thickest neck and the biggest muscles. It's as much about the aesthetics, the symmetry, and the beauty of the human body that needs to be encouraged and promoted. In Arnold's words, we need to make sure that we are rewarding the right guys, because if you reward the right guys, then everyone will start training to have a beautiful body again, rather than to have the powerlifting body.
So Arnold walked away. Not quietly, but with obvious disgust and disappointment. He stopped attending competitions, stopped supporting the sport publicly, and began to distance himself from the bodybuilding community. His absence from the sport he had once dominated was a powerful statement. The king had abdicated his throne, not because he was forced to, but because he could no longer bear to rule over what his kingdom had become. Arnold's rejection of modern bodybuilding wasn't just personal, it was prophetic. He saw where the sport was heading and wanted no part of it. He chose to preserve his legacy by separating himself from the sport's decline. Bodybuilding goes deeper than just aesthetic preferences or moral concerns. It represents a fundamental philosophical disagreement about what bodybuilding should be and what it should represent. Arnold believed that bodybuilding should inspire people to be better versions of themselves. It should show them what's possible through dedication, discipline, and hard work. It should be a positive force that encourages healthy lifestyle choices and personal development. Modern bodybuilding, in Arnold's view, does the opposite. It discourages natural development by promoting impossible standards. It encourages dangerous behavior by glorifying extreme drug use. It promotes negative body image by presenting grotesque physiques as ideals. Arnold also believed that bodybuilding should be accessible to everyone. His physique, while extraordinary, was still recognizably human. People could look at Arnold and think, maybe I can't look exactly like that, but I can work towards something similar. Modern bodybuilders, with their pharmaceutical-enhanced physiques and extreme proportions, are completely inaccessible to normal people. They represent a standard that can only be achieved through dangerous drug use and genetic extremes. Arnold's bodybuilding was about human potential. Modern bodybuilding is about human excess. Arnold's bodybuilding was about what we could become. Modern bodybuilding is about what we should never become. The irony is that Arnold's rejection of modern bodybuilding has only increased his legendary status. By walking away from the sport's decline, he has preserved his image as the embodiment of bodybuilding's golden age. Young people who discover bodybuilding today often gravitate toward Arnold's era, not the modern sport. They're inspired by the classical physiques and aesthetic ideals of the golden era, not the mass monsters of today. Arnold's disgust with modern bodybuilding has become a rallying cry for those who want to return the sport to its roots. His rejection of the current state of bodybuilding has given legitimacy to critics who argue that the sport has lost its way. But Arnold's influence extends beyond just criticism. His continued success in other fields, his positive public image, and his inspirational message have shown that there's life beyond bodybuilding. He's proven that you can build on the foundation that bodybuilding provides without being trapped by its limitations. Arnold's business success, political career, and continued relevance in popular culture have demonstrated that bodybuilding can be a launching pad for greater achievements. He's shown that the discipline and work ethic developed through bodybuilding can be applied to any field. This broader perspective is part of what disgusts Arnold about modern bodybuilding. He sees athletes who are so obsessed with their sport that they can't see beyond it. They're trapped in a world of muscle and competition, unable to apply their talents to broader pursuits. Arnold's disgust is also fueled by missed opportunities. He sees the potential that modern bodybuilding has to be a positive force in the world, and he's frustrated by how that potential is being wasted. Bodybuilding could be promoting health, fitness, and personal development. Instead, it's promoting drug abuse, extreme behavior, and unrealistic standards. It could be inspiring people to improve their lives. Instead, it's encouraging dangerous obsessions. Arnold's vision of what bodybuilding could be makes his disgust with what it has become even more profound. He's not just disappointed in the sport's current state, he's heartbroken by its wasted potential.
In this abs and thigh shot, Arnold is hands down flat out defeating Ronnie Coleman. Even though he doesn't have the best quads, even though this is 1974, his best version, his quads are getting demolished by Ronnie Coleman's. However, that midsection is super small, the abdominal development and separation is perfect, and those obliques look really ripped and conditioned, and the V-taper is just superior, so much better than Ronnie Coleman's. Ronnie Coleman has an amazing set of lats there that flare out very well, but that huge midsection really takes away from the V-taper that could be created, and the midsection itself is just not aesthetically pleasing whatsoever. However, those thighs are super dominant and are smoking Arnold, like I said. So what do you guys prefer? Do you prefer the bigger, more dominant thighs and are arguably better conditioning for Ronnie, or do you prefer the more aesthetic Arnold? And for me, I really think if you put these two pictures and gave them to anyone, most people, if not all, would choose Arnold. So that really shows you guys that the golden era aesthetics with these more aesthetic shots really dominate over the newer, more massive guys that really lose their shape for mass.
The rise of classic physique as a competitive division has given Arnold some hope. This category, which emphasizes the aesthetic ideals of his era, represents a potential return to bodybuilding's roots. Arnold has expressed cautious optimism about classic physique and its star, Chris Bumstead. He sees in this division a possible path back to the sport's original ideals. The emphasis on proportion, symmetry, and classical aesthetics echoes the values that defined his era. But Arnold remains skeptical about whether this represents a true change or just a temporary trend. He's seen too many false dawns in bodybuilding's evolution to get too excited about any single development. His support for classic physique is conditional. If the division maintains its aesthetic focus and avoids the excesses of open bodybuilding, Arnold might become more involved. But if it follows the same path toward extreme size and pharmaceutical enhancement, he'll likely maintain his distance. Arnold's relationship with modern bodybuilding is complicated by his own legacy. He can't completely separate himself from the sport because he's so closely identified with it. His name will always be associated with bodybuilding, regardless of his current feelings about its direction. This creates a tension for Arnold. He wants to distance himself from what the sport has become, but he also wants to protect the legacy of what it once was. He's caught between rejecting the present and preserving the past. His solution has been to focus on the positive aspects of his bodybuilding legacy while avoiding direct involvement in the current sport. He talks about the discipline, work ethic, and goal-setting skills that bodybuilding taught him, while avoiding discussion of current competitions or athletes. This approach allows Arnold to maintain his connection to bodybuilding's positive aspects while distancing himself from its negative developments. It's a careful balance that preserves his legacy while expressing his disapproval of the sport's current direction. Arnold's disgust with modern bodybuilding also reflects broader concerns about society's relationship with health and fitness. He sees bodybuilding's extremes as symptomatic of a culture that has lost its way in pursuing physical perfection. The same social media culture that promotes unrealistic body standards, the same pharmaceutical industry that profits from performance enhancement, the same commercial interests that prioritize profit over health. All of these forces that Arnold sees corrupting bodybuilding are also corrupting society's broader relationship with fitness. Arnold's criticism of modern bodybuilding is really a criticism of modern culture's approach to physical development. He's arguing for a return to more balanced, sustainable, and healthy approaches to fitness and body development. His advocacy for functional fitness, outdoor activities, and balanced lifestyle choices represents his vision of what physical culture should be. It's a rejection not just of modern bodybuilding, but of the extreme, unsustainable approaches to fitness that dominate contemporary culture. But perhaps the most shocking aspect of Arnold's disgust with modern bodybuilding is how complete it has become. This isn't just disappointment or mild criticism. This is a fundamental rejection of something that once defined his life. Arnold has essentially disowned the sport that made him famous. He's walked away from the community that celebrated him, rejected the culture that shaped him, and distanced himself from the activity that gave him purpose for decades. This level of rejection is unprecedented in sports. Imagine Michael Jordan completely rejecting basketball, or Tiger Woods walking away from golf in disgust. Arnold's rejection of bodybuilding is that profound and that shocking. The fact that Arnold, of all people, has reached this level of disgust with bodybuilding should be a wake-up call for the sport. If the greatest bodybuilder of all time can't stand what the sport has become, what does that say about its current direction? Arnold's disgust is a mirror that reflects bodybuilding's moral bankruptcy. His rejection is a judgment that the sport has failed to live up to its potential and has betrayed its original ideals. The question now is whether bodybuilding will listen to Arnold's criticism and attempt to reform itself, or whether it will continue down its current path toward irrelevance and disgust. Arnold's legacy in bodybuilding is secure. He will always be remembered as the greatest champion of the sport's golden age. But his current disgust with the sport serves as a powerful reminder of how far bodybuilding has fallen from its original ideals. His rejection of modern bodybuilding is both a condemnation of what the sport has become and a challenge for what it could become again. Arnold has shown us what bodybuilding was at its best. Now it's up to the current generation to decide whether they want to return to those ideals or continue down the path that has disgusted even its greatest champion. The king has spoken. He has judged his kingdom and found it wanting. The question is whether anyone is listening and whether anyone cares enough to change course. Arnold Schwarzenegger built bodybuilding into a global phenomenon. Now he watches in disgust as that phenomenon destroys itself. His rejection of the sport is both an ending and a beginning, a condemnation of what is, and a challenge for what could be. The Austrian Oak has cast his final judgment on modern bodybuilding, and that judgment is damning. What do you think? Is Arnold right to be disgusted with modern bodybuilding? Has the sport really lost its way? Or is this just the natural evolution of competitive athletics? And can bodybuilding ever return to the aesthetic ideals that Arnold represents? Let me know in the comments. Arnold's criticism of modern bodybuilding has sparked a debate that goes to the heart of what the sport should be and what it should represent. Thanks for watching this exploration of why the greatest bodybuilder of all time has turned his back on the sport he once loved. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the complex world of bodybuilding culture and politics. Until next time, remember, sometimes the harshest critics are those who love something the most.